Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome me back from Barrett Jackson. So what we're going to do today is give you a walk-around rundown of the project that's been getting built quietly in the back of the shop just because we had so much other crap going on, and give you the ins and outs on what we did to this thing. Alright, so we'll start off with the fact that it just poured out here and I have a pond that I'm in. We pushed the truck outside. Don't mind the chalk block, that's because there's no drive shaft in it right yet. That's being made as we speak. And it's outside because it's open headers, so we're not going to run it in the shop and stink the place out because, you know, we have the boat guys on this side and I don't want to be a jerk. This is a 1978 F100 Custom. It's a two-wheel drive. It was a 302 C4 truck. So we have since removed that anemic power plant and that crappy transmission and replaced it with a Gen 2 Coyote and 6R80 out of a Mustang. So, you know, 2015 area Mustang. I forget what the breakpoint is. It's like I think it's 2011 to 2015 is the Gen 2, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on it. So, to get this thing in here, we've used a lot of different parts from a lot of different companies, and I'll just go over some of the main ones. So Fat Fender Garage supplied a motor mount transmission mount kit that locates this engine perfectly forward and back and side to side because it is kicked off a little bit to this side from the factory because of the transmission tunnel so that everything clears. Totally normal. We also used their ECM box. And I made a custom mount here, and we tucked all of our spare wiring off of the factory harness kit. Only part of that was used underneath there. That brings us to our next manufacturer, was Power by the Hour. They supplied us with their harness kit, their Ford Power Pack ECM, the entire front drive setup, because it flips the alternator, moves the AC down here because originally the AC on these engines is down here and now the power steering is down there. We also use Power by the Hour's oil filter relocation kit, so that is now mounted right down there. We ended up using stock Mustang manifolds on this. We actually had to get the Gen 1 manifold for the driver's side because the driver's side on the Gen 2s has a long extension pipe that comes off of it. Instead of just having a flange right at the end of the manifold here, like the Gen 1s do. Gen 2, the passenger side, works fine. Driver's side, if you're going to use the stock ones, you got to use a Gen 1. And you also have to clearance it slightly around your power steering gearbox if you're not using a front clip with a rack and pinion type deal like we did on Sunshine. Fat Fender does make a beautiful set of tubular headers for these things, but they're a little up there at $2,000, but they are perfect and they fit perfect. And I'm gonna tell you right now, while we were out at Barrett Jackson, we talked to the vendor, the guy that was running the vendor space for Fat Fender, and he said, hey, have you guys been by the shop? And we went, no. Why don't you go by the shop and take a tour? And I was like, that's not even something we knew we could do. So we took a tour. Our tour guide was extremely informative. Like any questions we had, she knew exactly what was going on. And then Jason, who is the owner of Fat Fender, as we were leaving, came out of a meeting to come over and see us and introduce himself and say hi and everything because we're going to be getting on board with them as a dealer-to-dealer type deal. So that was awesome. He absolutely didn't have to come out of his meeting to come and shake our hands and talk to us for 10-15 minutes, but he did, and that was kick-ass. Let's get back into here. So, when you're doing this, I like to use the appropriate cold air kit from whatever will fit either an F-150 or a Mustang. We went with the Mustang for a Gen 2 because the Gen 2 has a couple extra vacuum lines on here. I also like to use, I'm going to pop this off real quick, the stock vacuum setup from the booster all the way to the front, because it has this valving in here, because some of these vents are fresh air vents, some of these vents are vacuum vents, and it takes your main vacuum signal for everything else here, and it fits perfectly. Now you can use both Power by the Hour and Fat Fender make a heater connection kit that changes these to AN fittings or a different style, whatnot. Since this was not a crazy build, we went with the stock ones, and I capped this one off, and these are just Dorman pieces that attach to the quick connect and to our lines to go back into our Vintage Air kit, which we'll get onto Vintage Air in a second. So we are running Vintage Air in this, and when you run Vintage Air, there is their block off, their hot water block off when your AC is on. Coyotes have to have some kind of coolant flow through the heads, through your heater lines, at all times. So when this is blocked off, Power by the Hour, and I believe Fat Fender makes one too. This is the Power by the Hour unit. It's just an H that goes in there that will bypass and give you just enough coolant flow, because if you don't have that coolant flow, the engine will overheat. That's just a known issue. That's how they're designed. Whatever, that's what it is. We've got our Vintage Air condenser in here, our receiver dryers down there. I've made all my other wiring. I'll get into my fan controller and stuff in a minute. Ended up making my upper and lower radiator hoses because we couldn't find something that was a direct fit. Usually a Mustang set will work. I just couldn't get it to work this time, so I just made hoses. This is a Champion 4-core radiator and their fan setup. Also automatic transmission, so you make sure you get a cooler in there too, or at least an external cooler. I like running through the radiator and an external cooler. This one's just through the radiator. We are using a Davies Craig fan controller. I put one of these on the Black Trans Am a while ago, and I like it. So this is a standalone system. This is not using any inputs from the ECM to turn my fans on. It has a coolant temp sensor that's down in the block on this side. Now that we've removed the stock block for the oil filter, we get access to this one fitting that's in the side of the block there, because it's really the only coolant fitting in this whole engine that you can use. So that controls it independently, but it is hooked up into the Vintage Air, so when the AC comes on, it will put the fans on full time anytime the AC command is on. Stock master booster, stock brakes, nothing crazy on this. Remote reservoir for power steering, remote reservoir for our coolant overflow. I have not let this got up to operating temp yet. We've just kind of started it and shut it down today while it's outside. This is the first time it'll go to operating temp. On the inside, don't mind all my extra spare parts. So, we are running a completely stock column. There is no dash pad, there's no roof, there's no rug, there's no door panels. He was just interested in getting the main part of the powertrain and all the other interior accessories on and done. So we have Dakota digital gauges. We have the Vintage Air controller, of course. We have a retro auto sound radio, which is in there but not finished just because we do not have a mount plate for the back. You know, design, not design, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever, something to make it look pretty. I have my OBD2 mounted in the glove box. So right now my HP Tuners dongle is plugged into it, but that other plug right there is to a BIM module that's also made by Dakota Digital, which sends all of my signals from the ECM directly to my dash, except oil pressure. Fords like to have an on-off switch style oil pressure, and we need actual oil pressure to read. So that actually is one of the things I did remotely, because I didn't want to put a whole bunch of plugs down there, even though there is a plug I can do. So what I did was put it on. Let me see if I can get you down there to see it. Yeah. So it's on the back side of our oil filter remote mount, and it works perfectly. Let me go over, think if there's anything else in here. Oh, American Auto Wire harness from front to rear. So updated with all your nice awesome clean fuses, no more glass fuses or anything. And that's about it. All the radio stuff is hanging there because there are no speakers in it yet. No antenna, no nothing like that. He just wanted to get the radio in and wired so it does power up and work. And he's going to do all that stuff himself. Drive-by-wire pedal assembly. It's a factory Ford Mustang pedal assembly. Also, Fat Fender Garage supplied the mount that is mounted to. So, I think that's about it. After I get this all warmed up and cycled and all the fluids bled, we can send this off to get exhaust done and do some measurements and throw that over to our drive shaft guy and get a drive shaft made. And then, forbidding any further issues, like, because this truck has sat, the customer told us, for well over 10 years. He had it painted and then it sat forever. It was inside, but it sat forever. So as far as we can tell, pushing it around the shop, the brakes work. Not sure driving-wise if the brakes are going to work. They look very rusty in the front, those rotors, from sitting, so we might have to do something with that too. But he's got MagnaFlow mufflers are going to go on this thing. We're doing 2.5-inch all the way back with either an X or an H pipe, either or. But yeah, everything back here, he's got no rear bumper, so the only wiring left to do on it is down there is my plate light wiring, since, you know, we don't have a plate light or mount or bumper. And then the remaining wiring in the engine bay is just this for windshield washer pump, which there is no reservoir. The squirters are in there, but nothing's ran. That also he was not concerned about right now at this time. So I am going to do all my prelim checks, and then we're going to fire this thing up. All right, now forgive me if you can't hear absolutely anything, because we all know Coyotes have the most annoying cold start ever, and it's even worse with open headers. But so I have this up here to monitor everything I need, air, fuel, all that stuff. The only things that'll be reading on the dash are my oil pressure, because like I said, that's through the dedicated sensor, and my fuel level, which is very low. Other than that, all these other settings, actually electrical will too, because that's hooked up directly through. Oh, so everything but temp, speed, and engine speed. So yeah, all right, let's see. Should fire right up. I want to make sure I don't have any check engine lights or anything too, so we're going to go through that and scan that stuff. Holy crap! I'll be back once it idles down. Alright, as you can hear, it has idled down. As you can see, my fuel trims are very lean. That's open headers. Can't really do anything about that until it, you know, we get the exhaust on it. I'm waiting. There we go. Now we're dropping down. I was waiting for it to drop down to my 650 commanded idle, because we've got park neutral 650, drive 600. Now it's finally down. That's where I was waiting for it to do. So I'm going to let this get up to 180 and see when my fans kick on. So this Davies Craig whole fan controller setup is programmable for any temperature. Whatever you set it for, it comes on at that temperature. When it falls 10 degrees below that, it shuts off and just keeps continuing that cycle. But being as our plug or our sensor is down here, I'm not sure if it's getting a great signal, so I want this to hit 180 and my fans to come on. So for that to happen, I might have to turn the tune the Davies Craig to turn on at like 190 or 170 or somewhere around there. As long as that, when my main Ford ECT sensor sees 180, the fans come on. That's what I want to happen, and that could be at any temperature difference, because we're down at the bottom of the block over here. But so far, absolutely mint. Got 35 or so pounds of oil pressure. We have no engine codes last time I checked. Let's see if we got anything this time. No DTCs. I have scanner off checking. I have 2 permanent DTCs, but that's because Initially, I had started this with the mass airflow unplugged, so it just has to go through its self-check and it'll clear out those permanent DTCs. Those don't cause an engine light or anything like that. Those are just in there until it runs its self-test. I'm also going to go through and make sure I'm getting heat when I'm supposed to get heat out of here. So right now it's getting a little too lean, so it's starting to get a little bit of a lean misfire at idle. So I don't want to run this too long. I just want my fans to come on, and then this is going back inside until it goes out for exhaust and drive shaft. So this is what I was talking about with my temp and why I wanted to double check that. So right now we're at 181 on the ECM's coolant temp sensor. But if you look over here at my Davies Craig, because it does have a little readout, we are at 165. So I don't know if that clipped out because the microphone hit the red, but the Davies Craig is reading 165. So I'm going to see how high this gets up to, which, I mean, it's cooling, just convection cooling pretty good. It's keeping it down at 181. But I want to see if that's saying 160 and this is saying 181. I might have to set my fans to come on around 170 or so, and that should keep the temp down at about 185. So it's math. I know everybody loves math, but yeah, so I'm going to wait for those to kick on and see what happens. But that's the difference between where on your vehicle you grab your temp from. And this is the location that pretty much everybody does when you need to use an external temp sensor. It took a while of searching to figure that out, but I finally came across a bunch of very smart guys on a forum for Factory 5. If you don't know them, they make some really sick kit cars, all kinds of stuff from AC 427 Cobra replicas to straight up build-it-yourself type hypercars. But those guys have done this stuff a ton, so they were a wealth of information. But I'm going to continue watching this temp and see what that does, and then we are going to set my fan controller accordingly. Well, there we go. So I've determined at 195 degrees, if I set my Davies Craig controller to 185, that comes on, cools it right down, no problem. All my fluids are now bled, with the exception of course, transmission fluid. I can't really warm that up without, besides just running it here till we get the drive shaft in. But I had a big air bubble for some reason over in my heater line, so I had to pop those off to bleed that out. Fine now, perfect heat and everything. So we are good to go. So we're gonna push this back into the shop. My God, this thing is annoying, open headers. And then it's gonna sit there until I think next week it's got its appointment for exhaust and everything, because I really don't want to be running this anymore. As with my long terms pegged like that. So it's good for just sitting here running. It's not good for long term or driving or any of that crap. Need a little extension pipe on those manifolds. That's some lean misfires right there. But everything's great. Let's see, been fully warmed for a while now. We're at 30 pounds of oil pressure. These things run at about 30 pounds and then shoot up to 80 when you give it any kind of throttle. But we're good to go. So the next time you see this thing, it won't be nearly as annoying, and we should almost be ready for a test drive.